Thank you very much. So, hi, I'm Lorna. I am VP of Developer Experience at a company called OpenUK. We do OpenAPI tooling. So you will know us for OpenUK CLI, lots of OpenAPI validation linting, and of course Redoc, our open source documentation tooling. I work on some of those things for my day job, but I'm also on the OpenUK board, a standards contributor, an open source project maintainer, and I have opinions. I'd like to start with a definition of developer experience because there are about 10, but this one's mine. Developer experience is about people getting things done in a confident and efficient way. And developer experience is about that, whether you're talking about developer experience inside a company, developer experience for third-party users of something that you sell, or when we talk about the developer experience of open source contributors, probably volunteers, who get involved in our project. And maybe the open source use case is the place where it matters the most, because to be efficient with the available time and energy and contributions in open source, for me that's respectful and it's really, really important. We talk about the big culture transformation that is in DevOps, where improving the process and the culture, crucially, makes a big difference and allows us all to do the same work, but better, safer, faster. And I feel that's what we're bringing, but just a little bit further into the application stack. The other thing about open source specifically when it comes to developer experience is open source projects are very, very asynchronous. Like, it might take a year to hear back from somebody. It's not just a time zones problem, it's an availability problem, and your projects need to be designed for that. When I think about the open source life cycle, I think about how we transition between one role and another, and this happens a kaleidoscope of times because we are, each of us, maintainers or contributors or users in all of the different projects. You don't just ever wear one hat. Well, and somebody said at FOSDEM that maintainers wear 15 hats, and I think that's understating the issue. We want people to have a great experience, to be able to use our open source project, and we want them to become contributors. And a contributor for me is someone who updates the docs or just opens a really meaningful issue that I can do something with that bug report. Right? I was upstairs and signing up for the mailing list on one of the sponsor booths, and they said, oh, by the way, when you get to the screen with the yes/no answers, could you let us know if it only says yes? Because someone reported that and we can't replicate it. Indeed, yes. The only option was yes. I sent them a screenshot and they can sort that out now. That makes me almost, a contributor to that project. I am part of it. You don't have to be slinging code to have value and to give something to a project. We talk about the transition from contributor to maintainer. Honestly, there's a middle ground, whether you want to call them a reviewer or something else, where they're familiar to the project. You might not have full admin commit access, but you are closing issues, testing things, doing simple request reviews. GitHub has a triage role for this. Like, that is an intermediate stage. But we want people to be able to get from one place and move forward and make progress within the project if they want to. So how do we begin? We begin with the README. And many, many READMEs are missing the first and most important part of the README, which, hi, what is this? What does it do? What do I use it for? What problem does it solve? I don't need the installation instructions until I know if I'm in the right place or not. And who knows how I got here? I clicked on a link on the internet. It didn't come from your beautiful developer portal. Like, thank you for building such a wonderful developer portal. You can think of it as being the red carpet, and inevitably your party guests will climb in through the toilet window and then wonder why they don't know where everything is. So a really good README is crucially important. If you don't know where to start, then the purpose of the project would be enormously appreciated as the first words on your README. I would like the install instructions. I know I was just rude about that. I would like the install instructions. I would like some basic usage, and I would like some pointers to other things. If your README is full of screenshots, contains GIFs, or is more than 3 whole scroll screens wide on my big monitor, it's too long. Please put some of that information somewhere else. I think we sometimes use the README as we should tell people that, I'll put it in the README dumping ground. But actually, READMEs are documentation. They are part of your project, they are a resource. And so everything you know about good information architecture and communicating technical concepts to an appropriate audience, all of that applies. So just use those skills and don't be afraid to revisit your README every 6 months or a year. You know, the world changes and so does your project. Most open source projects would do better to have more documentation. Having documentation makes your project exponentially more useful, right? Because more people can understand what it is for, more people can get themselves over the hurdle of getting started with this project, more people can understand how their use case could be fitted by your tool. It's a real multiplier. I always recommend projects to use some sort of docs as code. All of the GitHub, GitLab, this one's actually Codeberg platforms, all support rendering, markdown, restructured text, ASCII doc, pick your poison. There is a right answer, but you can ask me later. And for this, I think that's a great place to put a longer getting started article. People might be new to your tool. They also might be new to your tech stack. Before I was really a polyglot engineer, I struggled with tools in other stacks. I didn't need to write the code for the tool, but if I'm not super familiar with the dependency managers or what the jargon means, it can be a bit hard for me to get started, even if the perfect tool already exists in that stack. I'm happy to run it, but you need to spell it out. We're all at different levels of maturity. If there's a trick to setting it up on a particular operating system, like let's have a page on that in the documentation, link it from the README, but tidy it up, move it somewhere, people can link to it, and you can update it if you need to. Also, if you have any advanced usage, often that merits its own documentation, and part of the reason for that is so that impatient developers, look, we all work under pressure. We're all in a hurry. Really senior developers are really, really senior skip readers, but there's things that they shouldn't be reading on the first go, move it out the README, and then they won't. You have to go looking for it. Another thing that can help on this is adding metadata to your project. It's not just about people knowing what to do when they get there, it's about them finding your project in the first place. I talked about the project purpose in the README. The same is true for your summary and the topic tags that will help people who are looking for a project that's a bit like yours. Maybe they don't know what the name of your project is, and adding this metadata makes you much more discoverable. It also gives them some extra signal on whether they're in the right place for the thing that they were looking for. So use these extra metadata fields to curate your presence and help people to find you. This screenshot's from GitLab, but all the different platforms have similar functionality, and they also all show some of those stats of your project as well. So, you know, you're advertising those stats, so have a look at the stats you want to be advertising. Like, does your project need some work? Moving from being a user to maybe a really engaged user, a champion, a participant, requires a really well-organized issue list. And honestly, a well-maintained issue list is like a tidy front garden. It's a really warm welcome. It makes your project look used and inhabited and loved. The garden analogy just comes round again and again for me. I do think of that backlog maintenance as gardening. And just like my garden, you take your eye off it for 2 weeks and you look around and things are out of control in places. It just needs a bit of tidying up. Close issues. Just close them. If you're not doing the thing or you have answered the question, don't worry about it. Closing an issue can be undone. We can reopen it. Like, you haven't broken anything or taken anything away. So feel free to just close, and it helps keep the actual issues available. I'm currently working on an open standards project, which, when I first really got back into it about half a year ago, had over 500 open issues. We're a tiny team, so it's like, well, hey team, which of these are we doing? It turns out a lot were duplicates, a lot were outdated, a lot could be closed. So keeping it tidy helps everybody, maintainers, contributors, first-time visitors, everybody. If you know there's an issue, or there's something you haven't built yet, or you haven't worked on it yet, just open the issue. Otherwise, someone else will. And it can be helpful for them to see it, to upvote it, to comment or add their use case or context to your issue. If you have a known problem with a known workaround, go ahead and get that information there. Don't send anything by back channels, just get it out there. If there's a way to do this, even if it means using another tool, help your users to unstick them for now. Fix it when you can. There are a couple of tags which will take the issues from your projects and share them more widely. GitHub uses the help wanted tag. So if there's an open issue that you know you're not going to work on, and it's your project, feel free to add the help wanted tag. So Rob and I maintain a library that was abandoned. So it's very much in maintenance mode. We are not adding any of the features it does not have. If someone else adds, particularly there's a couple of features that are they are missing. Like, it would be so cool if we had this. If you open a pull request, I will absolutely review that. Am I building the feature? Honestly, no. So it's tagged as help wanted. I really hope someone will build that feature for this project one day, but I don't have the skills or the bandwidth, or I don't know, it's not happening. Being open about that can really help people to understand where they are in your project. They don't wait 5 years hoping you're going to build this feature one day because it's on the backlog. They know they're welcome to help, and we have a couple of things that we've said, no, we're not making that, disruptive change. Yes, the alternative would be better, but it would be disruptive to all our existing users, and therefore we have chosen we are not making that change. And you can find that in our issue backlog too. There's also a good first issue tag, and there are websites that syndicate those good first issue tags from across the various code sites. So people who are looking for something to get started with can start there. And I think having those tags in your repository and making it clear where people can begin is a really good way to bring people in and help them find how to be effective if that's what they're looking for. One thing that all projects need is a code of conduct. Your code of conduct sets the social norms and the expectations for everybody who participates in this project. If you start creating a file called Code of Conduct in GitHub, it will prompt you with some suggestions. This is a very mainstream feature. If your project doesn't have it, I suggest that you add it. If you are a corporate owner of an open source project, then you really do need this in place, and you need to back it up. So you need to have the internal docs of who does what's written in the code of conduct, who executes if we need to take some action, whether it's warning a user, maybe having a short-term block. Is there a GitHub team that has access to that? How do you maintain that? What do you do if people leave the company? You need all of that sort of governance for your open source projects. It's important in all projects, but in company-owned projects, it's a must-have. If this is something that you don't have and you need, check out the resources for the OSPOs. To-do group has some great ones, and those will get you started and give you what you need for this. We know that having a code of conduct helps people to feel included, to feel that they can participate in this project. You know, software as a whole has a diversity problem. Wikipedia cites that 95% of open source participation is by men. I'm an open source project maintainer. There are not many other women doing what I do. So add your code of conduct and just, you know, operate in an even-handed way. Try to encourage everybody. And I will also shout out that I am running a Women in Open Source project, so come and grab a card at the end if that's something that you're interested in joining or hearing more about. Okay, so they found an issue they want to work on. We are moving people through our evolution of open source. You're going to need a contributing file. And the contributing file needs to write down all those things that are sometimes unwritten in open source projects. If you need a particular branching strategy, or you just really like it when things are named a certain way, write it down, otherwise how will I know? Also with the commit naming, you know, you might have a whole convention going on, but unless you can link me to the standards on that or write down what I should be doing, I am going to get it wrong. And as a first-time contributor, that doesn't make me feel welcome in your project. If you have tests, I would like to run them. It's radical and revolutionary, so write that down and try to keep it up to date. I know some tech stacks, in particular, those standards move and evolve, the tooling changes. Keep updating your contributing file so that other people can run those tests. The other advantage is that when there's new versions of this dependency or that dependency or a different operating system, they can also grab the main branch and just run the tests and report you the bugs. So you're enabling people to be part of it at lots of different levels. If you're using a particular coding standard, maybe your editor applies it automatically. Which one is it? Because my editor probably doesn't. So make sure that you have those things written down, and you also document how to set those things up for anyone who wants to do it locally. You should include the process for amending your documentation. Docs contributions are like one of the most incredible things that a new user can do for your project, because if you're a maintainer, you know how your project works. And you don't write down the things that seem weird to someone who's never seen it before. So spread lots of love and affection on the fly-by contributors that like fix 2 things or add a paragraph to your docs, because they are literally saving the world. And you can pay that forward to the other projects that you visit on your journeys. We talk a lot about the contributing file, and it's one of GitHub's standard files. Again, all the other platforms have similar. One thing that I have also found useful is a maintainer file, particularly on the projects that I don't work on every day. If I can't remember how to do a release, because I do it twice a year, or he does it most of the time. If it's not written down, we just would not remember how to do it. So the contributing file, also the maintainer file, can help you. Reviewing pull requests. If you already work in software engineering or platform engineering, then this is familiar to you. It's a very transferable skill. But the stakes are a lot higher. If you offend your colleagues, they'll complain about you. If you offend your open source contributors, they will go away and never come back. If you offend them enough, they'll tell their friends. So think about how you can put in some guardrails, be super constructive. Lots of people come to open source to learn, or they might be patching your project to try to solve a problem that they are having in their setup. Always be clear. Are you asking them to change something? Say that. The formatting's a bit funky. That's nice. Mars is very bright tonight. Like, isn't the weather nice? Like, if you would like that user to change the formatting, you need to say, please change the formatting. We mostly use this somewhere else in the project. I'm sorry it's not in the contributing file. Because of the very asynchronous nature, if you have a pull request that's 90% good and needs one more thing changed, at work you would send that back to the person who did it, they would learn how to do it, you would tell them they're great, and you would accept it. In open source, you can wait half a year, and they won't remember what the pull request was about. So be prepared to add one more commit, to add the link to the main navigation or some other small thing. Just reformat the full stop. Just do that. One more thing. Push your one commit and merge. That's it. Be super consistent. Like, if you ask someone to change their commit message, then you need to always do that, because they look to your commit history, just saying. Be responsive. And it doesn't matter if it's a one-liner. All of my open source projects this week are getting, that sounds great, I'm on the road. Sounds awesome, I'm on the road, right? We'll get there. How I'm getting out of this notification forest, I do not know. But be responsive. Otherwise, they're going to open another issue in another week that says, is this project abandoned? It's like, no, I'm just living my actual life. So do respond and just explain, hey, this is non-trivial. Or, as we also had, actually, we don't have the skills to review this. Like, you're massively refactoring the way that we package our tool, and we inherited this, and I don't know, right? Just be honest. I think that one's still open, actually. But the thing you need to think about is, does this feature improve the situation for the majority of users? Because you have to support this change until the end of time. So it has to be a net win. But if it's a net win, even if it's not perfect, go ahead, accept it. We're moving everything forward. Again, if you're a corporate owner of an open source project, then your obligations are even greater. Please make sure there's a bunch of people that are subscribed to the notifications on those projects, because you are, even if it's a tiny fraction of your time, in theory paid to work on it. You know, you can pass the ball internally, but don't drop it completely. Developer experience is about culture. It is about putting things in place for people to be successful. But the machines can help us. And, you know, they can help us to be efficient with people's time, including maintainers' time, because that is also extremely valuable and somewhat in shortage. So make this easy for yourself. Let the machines help us. They love open source too, so they can be part of it. And it means we also get a quicker feedback loop for the things that are very low-hanging, like the code formatting or the tests. Some suggestions: if you like linting, then turn that on. Top tip, turn on linting for your prose files as well. I was amazed how many markdown mistakes I caught turning on Prettier on not a big project at all recently. Amazing. If you have formatting and coding standards, just automate that, right? Whether you have it annotate or just fix, I don't mind, but turn it on. I don't want to wait 3 months for you to review it to tell me that my tabs are not to your taste. Always build or compile on every pull request. If it's docs, preview the docs. Like, build, do the what do we do when we merge? Like, do that thing. Check your spelling, check your links. Whatever you would run locally, even if it's plugged into your editor by default, that helps everybody. Contributors, reviewers, maintainers, you. We can all go on and review another pull request if the machines do this for us. This stuff is often thought of as developer experience inside a corporate project, but like I say, to respect our community and really empower them, the time invested on this is worth it. And if you don't know how to do the tool setup, look for another project, ask for help, crowdsource it. It's open source. All of those tools need to be documented in the contributing file, and they need to be able to be run locally, ideally in a choice of tools. I have some accessibility needs, so I may not be able to use the same editor as you. You just need to explain to me which recognized standard we're using, and I can probably do that with my tools. That shorter feedback loop is absolutely part of developer experience. One more thing before I wrap it. Your project is more than the code or even the words that are in it. Build it, they're not going to come. Some of this is on you. If you've built something that you believe in, you need to tell us, right? So there's a little bit of outreach. And maybe if you're an engineer, you don't love this, but open source does not have a marketing budget. You need to do that work. You need to write about your project. You need to tell your local meetup. You need to look for ways to feature your project or interact with the projects beside your project. You need to add your project to your Stack Overflow tag search and keep an eye on it. You need to massively encourage other people doing all of those things and tell them to keep doing all of those things, because the outreach is part of your responsibility to your project. For this to grow and live and be sustainable, it needs users. And then if you don't have users, you also don't have contributors, you definitely don't have maintainers. This thing is dead. So the outreach, don't forget it. And it loops back to having a great README, having your project visible, having other people talk about it. The developer experience in open source is important, and perhaps it's more important than when we're talking about people who get paid to get through however painful your development process or integration process is, because a lot of open source is on a voluntary basis. I think the one thing that I haven't talked about, which is the magic multiplier in open source, is whether you meet a user, a participant, a contributor, a reviewer, or a maintainer, say thank you. Say thank you for their time, and by building a great experience and making efficient use of their time and then thanking them for their input, it makes it all go just that little bit further. Thanks a lot.